Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to another episode of The Fishing Teacher, and thank you very much for swinging by the channel and checking it out today. We're going to be talking about the old school tube today, guys. I'm going to give you some tips and advice on the conditions where it works good and sort of give you an overview of it because it's sort of a forgotten lure there. And we've covered a little bit in the past here, but I'm going to show you or actually talk about two primary techniques to use with it and the exact set of conditions that it works the best in today's video. Also guys, a big thank you out there to everybody that's been subscribing to the channel here lately. I think we're 400 people away from 10,000 subscribers. So if you guys would like to jump on board and hit that subscribe button, help us get to 10,000, that'd be much appreciated. And also when we hit 10,000 guys, we got a big giveaway. We're going to be giving away a case of Bridgeford Sweet Baby Ray beef jerky to just a random subscriber when we hit 10,000. So if you want to have a chance for that, just hit that subscribe button. Much appreciated. Okay guys, the old school tube, man. Let me tell you, I like to give a little bit of a backstory anytime I do these videos. The first time that I ever fished a tube was down at Table Rock Lake back in the mid 80s. And the very first tubes that ever came out, they were called the Bobby Garland Fat Gets It. And it was sort of basically the same thing here, except most of them were, it was a little bit shorter and most of them were some type of a shad pattern. And I drew this old guy out at Table Rock down there. He'd lived there forever. I'd never seen a Fat Gets It before, and he put that thing like on a little 16th ounce jig head. You know, he just took a jig head and inserted it up inside of the tube and just started casting it around on 6-pound test line, and he caught a ton of fish the day I was with him. He actually, I drew him out in a BFL tournament, which was the old Red Man back there where he used to draw for partners. So I learned a lot about then. And then what really got me started on it is this thing started to become sort of it became sort of a secret pitching and flipping bait back in the early 90s. And there was a handful of us, or I was one of about 20 guys that figured this thing out and found out about it back in the early 90s. And we went through a period of like 3 or 4 years where nobody really knew about this thing except just a little in the know group, and won a bunch of tournaments here locally on the thing. A lot of other people won tournaments. And finally, one guy from Arkansas, who knew about the tube, he won a big tournament on it and he gave it away to the world. And ever since then, everybody'd thrown them and the effectiveness went down a little bit. But guys, the tube is just as effective today as it was anytime under the right conditions. So I want to talk about two different ways to fish it. The first of all, guys, and my favorite is something like a 4-inch tube here. This is my favorite. Also, I'll put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description to all the different type of tubes you can get, different companies that have them. I really like the Zoom tube, so if you guys want to check that link out, you can get you some. But the first way I like to fish it is on a Texas rig. Usually I'm just Texas rigging anywhere between a 3/16 to maybe a 5/16 weight, something in that line there. I'm usually pitching it like on 17 to 20 pound test Seaguar and Vizex line. I usually peg the slip sinker against it, usually use a 2 to 3/0 offset worm hook on the thing to get it to sit straight, because you can't use a straight shank because it's hollow. But I'm basically pitching it and flipping it around to any shallow cover. Now the time that a tube works and outproduces other type of baits for pitching and flipping, in my opinion, it's when the fish are a little bit more finicky and when they're in shallow water cover, like really shallow water cover. If you said, Randy, what's the ideal scenario to catch fish on a tube? I would say that if you've got shallow cover in like less than 2.5 feet of water, so it could be a flooded bush, it could be a lay down log, it could be, you know, a boat dock piling, it could be a stump, shallow grass, whatever. But a tube, since it is sort of diminutive, doesn't make a lot of noise and it doesn't displace a lot of water, it's a really good subtle bait to fish in that super shallow water because it doesn't really spook the fish. And that's why I like to use it on the lighter sinkers, like the 3/16 most of the time, because you got a nice fall, super, super subtle. And I can go along the shoreline and I can just, you know, real methodically and slow, you know, pitch that shallow cover where those fish are. They're a little bit, they're wary because they're in such shallow water, but they're still there to take advantage of the cover and whatever food is available, but just slowly, methodically picking through there, you know, with that shallow targets. It's also a really good bait when you're pitching and flipping any type of flooded bushes. If you have flooded bushes that are in shallow water, it's not that great in deeper bushes, but bushes that are in less than 3 foot of water, it's really good. And there's three colors that I mainly use. This is called the smoke with red flake. I like that. I like a green pumpkin, and I like a black one if the water's dirty. If the water's dirty, a black tube, say you've got 12 inches of visibility in the place you're fishing, a black tube is really, really good under those conditions. Now, the other way I fish it is like I was telling you about with the guy I fished with a table rock. It's just taking a jig head, a round ball head, and insert it up inside of the tube and fish it like a jig head setup, exposed hook jig head, 6 to 8 pound test line, and just fish it around like main lake and secondary points. Those flatter, gravelly, small rock points are really good for it. If you have a lake that has a mixed species of bass, so say you guys that fish like, Lake Cumberland or any Ozark lakes around here, or some of the Kentucky lakes where you've got some spotted bass, a smallmouth and largemouth, a tube on a jig head is really good. And also a tube is unbeatable if you fish up north for specifically smallmouth. A lot of guys that fish all the Great Lakes up there, that's all they use is a tube on a jig head. It's been the top producer for years. So anyway, guys, that's just sort of the set of conditions that I go by. Weather conditions when you're pitching and flipping doesn't really matter. To me, it's just more important to have that cover in shallow water, that cover that's in less than 2.5 or 3 feet of water. That's when it's like excels above anything else. So hope it helps out, guys. We'll talk later.